If morality is subjective, then everyone is completely at the mercy of everyone else's interpretation of morality. If there are no moral absolutes, it could not be wrong to be a thief or a racist. Without an absolute standard of morality, there is no reliable compass to even define what is progress and what is regression. Many Germans in Hitler's time saw him as progressive. The satanic concept of do as thou wilt inevitably leads to who are you to judge? Genesis 19:9 says, regarding the inhabitants of Sodom, speaking to Lot, as they were set on committing evil. And they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. Don't judge is usually the language of wicked people exposed for their wrongdoing. Proverbs 9:10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Any supposed relationship which anyone claims to have with God, not founded in a holy fear of God, would have to be a relationship with an imaginary God that is an idol. The Bible calls God jealous before it ever says that he is love. Yet people typically don't go around saying that God is jealous. Mixing lust into one's definition of love implies that anyone who opposes lust is guilty of hate. Ephesians chapter 4 verses 17 to 20 say, this I say therefore and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. But ye have not so learned Christ. And Romans chapter 1 verses 28 to 32 say, and even as they did not like to retain God. And that is a reference to retaining the true God in one's knowledge, not an idolatrous misrepresentation of God in their knowledge. And that is a reference to seeking him thoroughly in one's practical decisions. Continuing, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness. And this is especially referring to injustice and partiality. Fornication, the word in the Greek here is porneia, wickedness. That's especially referring to evil plots, covetousness or greediness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, or slaughter. Abortion is the slaughtering of innocents. Debate, and this is not referring to contending for truth. Think here of the strife related to envy and self-will, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, and that may be a reference to using his name lightly, or being irreverent towards him in other ways. And only God is called reverend in the Bible. Consider that regarding those who let others call them reverend. Continuing, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, acting like fools, spiritually senseless, covenant breakers, without natural affection, hard-hearted or uncaring about one's own offspring, and other natural relations whom one should especially care for and protect. Continuing, implacable, unable to be reasoned with, unable to come to a reasonable agreement, unwilling to cease from hostility, no matter what reasonable concessions the other side offers. Continuing, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in, that is, approve of, applaud, or consent with them that do them. We see how the Bible demonstrates the sinner cannot rightfully be separated from the sin. You also cannot sympathize with nor defend another's sin without incurring guilt upon yourself. It is better to see Christianity as restrictive and confining than to falsely view Jesus as a sympathizer of sin and a sanctifier of sin like many do. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. This in itself implies God's eternal existence, his infinite power, his separation from his creation, and his supremacy over all creation. The greater the authority who is disregarded and transgressed, the more unthinkable and egregious the offense. A lesson from the flood in Noah's time is that if you go with the flow of humanity, you will go with the flow of God's judgment on sinners. It is also normal for those who find fault with God's judgments to also find fault with God for not dealing with evil in the world. Proverbs 19:3 says, "The foolishness of man perverteth his way, and his heart fretteth against the Lord." Everyone knows there is a God, and a definite standard of right and wrong, which is from him. People actually reject authentic biblical Christianity as a crutch to get through life without ever having to deal with God as they ought to, and suffer for truth as they ought to, in preparation for Judgment Day and eternity. It is no wonder that people, both within and without churches, seek to separate Jesus Christ from the principles and requirements set forth in the Bible. Yet if you don't have to turn from your transgressions of God's law to be an authentic Christian, then you could even be one while just blatantly worshiping Satan. Satan preaches false grace through false Christian ministers to keep people in his service. The gospel of Christ calls for a drastic response of repentance towards God from man, and no one will make the appropriate response who won't acknowledge the truth that they have a drastic problem with God. The fact that life is not a popularity contest establishes that the true God will win in the end, no matter how few people choose to worship him on his terms and endure faithfully in that worship. Isaiah 2:17, "And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day."